Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Maher. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Longer Game. This is a podcast where we talk all about retail. Retail means in-store. It means e-commerce. It, of course, means Amazon. I'm always going to want to talk about Amazon, and I have a guest with me today that knows that space very well. It is Jun Choi. He's the Senior Vice President of Sales at Xnerta. Welcome to the show, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for having me here. And I think you just said it. So Jun Choi, Senior Vice President of Sales here at Xnerta. I actually was at Amazon when sponsored ads launched. So I've seen almost the entire evolution, I would say, of the retail media space for as much as I possibly have seen. And so always excited to talk about Amazon, always excited to talk about AMC and AI. So yeah, excited to get right into it.
I think what's interesting, because I was a seller when the ads platform first launched. And when I think about the past like 15 years of me being an entrepreneur, being in e-commerce, when I think about Amazon specifically too, people say that e-commerce changes, every day, every week, whatever. I do think that there are changes, but I still think the basics are true. But one of the things that really did change the game on Amazon was launching a media component, because it used to just be, I've got the best listing. Amazon's going to give me a little bit of preference when I list at the beginning, or I'm going to run giveaways or whatever people were doing to generate sales velocity, which initially was just launching a product and hoping it sells and having good SEO and getting a click because your main image was good. But then it was like doing giveaways to increase sales velocity. I don't know if you have probably better perspective on that than I do, but maybe Amazon's like, hey, we could add a media component because we see all these other companies, adding media. That I think has been the biggest change over the past decade. The other things, like you got to have good real estate. Your PDP's got to look good. The lever looks a little bit different. You've got more levers to pull. Still needs to look good. You got to get traffic to the page. That's an ad component. You got to have inventory. You got to, people still run out of stock. That's still a problem, which is kind of crazy. I know it's hard to project that stuff, but that feels like the biggest change to me. What was it like on the inside?
Yeah, I will say this. It was, I've seen some of the craziest things. Like I remember very vividly, and this is the example that I always give, where I saw the word mattress was 1 cent, right? A cent to click on the word mattress. And mattresses were selling for $900, $1,000, right? And so
imagine the ACoS on that.
I'm telling you right now, there was a point in time where I saw 100x ROAS on some of these campaigns. And this person was like, here's my credit card. You do whatever you want to do to spend as much money as you possibly can for us for this entire campaign. And so I think thinking back to that time, it was some of the most fun times I've ever had in my career. But also, I think it's really exciting to sell a product that, number one, you believe in, and then number two, that you see is actually helping sellers. Like we had sellers and I was working with sellers that literally Amazon was their livelihood, right? And so you get to experience them leveraging a tool and technology that's actually doing something that is meaningful for their business. And if it's their livelihood, they just care so much. And that was one of the most gratifying things. It's like, as much as it was fun from the business side of things, working with those sellers and being able to see their eyes light up when they see these campaigns, when they see the performance, when they see the impact of their business and their lives. And just like, I honestly, like, I still have those relationships nowadays with some of the folks that I work with that are my clients, because of just the experience that we had there. So from the inside, it was really fun just because of all those aspects.
Were you on DSP and sponsored ads, or just sponsored ads specifically?
It was back then. It was DSP and sponsored
Okay.
ads, way back when. So yeah, it was both.
I have a very similar memory when I was transitioning from being a seller into running my agency, and I look back at some of the campaigns, and I had a timer, like a interval timer. I was doing CrossFit, so I was like, okay, I would sell a lot of different stuff, but I started selling a lot of like fitness equipment. But I had this timer that was under this brand that I had come up with, and it was like the evolution was interesting. From I was just buying generic products and selling them. Then it was like creating a almost white labeling, but not really private label before that was even a thing. Just putting kind of like my company name or brand name under it, and then selling the product. But there was lots of duplicates of things. So like, of course, a lot of those things have cleared up. But then I started to develop a brand, which a lot of people have done, and like a legit brand. Like I came up with brand guidelines. I came up with who my avatar was. Like I really went through the full development. And I think a lot of private label brands do themselves a disservice by just saying, well, here's my brand name and here's my product. Like the reason why I think big consumer companies do well, yes, they have a lot of money, but they put a lot of time and energy into who's our target? Who are we going after? That's where you can't do, a year of consumer research probably and do those, big sit downs and those big studies with people, but you can use a PickFu. You can use something that helps you to get consumer research and validate your concept. But anyway, I remember when I was launching campaigns, I was advertising on like the term CrossFit or something, and it was like 10 cents a click. And my product was $149. Most of them were. So it was like 4% ACoS. I mean, it looks super, super good. It was like crazy seeing that back then, but that's a really good memory that I have too.
Yeah, I think, and those are just, I look back to when people were just like, I don't even want to, I don't know what sponsored ads is. I don't want to test it. Like that's something that, like, no, we're not even going to try to test it, to now everybody is using sponsored products. Everybody's using sponsored ads. So it's been interesting to see the evolution of this space. And I just think back to those times, and it's just always a fun memory, especially now where we are and where Amazon is from like an overall retail media standpoint. It's fun to look back at those times and see how far we've come.
So I think that the media side has been a huge benefit. A lot of people see it as a cost. And sure, you have to pay to play if that's what you want to call it. But pretty much every retailer has some kind of media network or whatever. So I think it's interesting that people will sometimes, get on Amazon like, well, now we have to, pay for ads, and it used to be this other way. Like, okay, well, things evolve. Like that happens. It's just a part of the evolution. And if anything, if you really know and understand how these ads work, you have a huge advantage that you can get yourself in front of other people and get yourself in front of the line. You still have to make your unit economics work. But like that, I think, is actually a better lever to pull than just running giveaways and hoping that you have the right search terms in your product. Like that, to me, gives you a competitive edge.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. And I think, to your point, for the people that know how to do it well, it gives them an extreme advantage. I think with sponsored products and sponsored ads, even way back then, is like the usefulness of the product. Because if you think about it, if somebody's going on Amazon and they're typing in the keyword basketball, right? And they're searching and actively searching for the keyword basketball, chances are they're pretty high intent. Like a lot of times some people go on Amazon to search for products, but searching for products on Amazon is signaling a pretty high intent. And so it's a very efficient way of targeting. And so I think from that standpoint, if you know what you're doing and if you know what you're doing well, and even back then, like even when we started, it was like nobody really was an expert in sponsored ads, but it was still so successful because the fundamental foundation of the product was it just makes sense, right? You're trying to convert shoppers. And when people are coming to Amazon, chances are they're coming to shop. And typing in a specific keyword, I always thought that even back then, it's like, I don't know how you could get even more granular and even more efficient than this ad structure because of just the fundamental aspect of people typing in a specific keyword and then also coming to Amazon to shop. So I think it's been a benefit. And I go back to literally those stories of like those personal stories of folks that have built their livelihood on Amazon, right? And have leveraged these tools and ad tools and media tools on Amazon to build the life that they wanted and to just like experience those stories firsthand. Like I think I will always see Amazon and kind of the media and the opportunity there as a benefit.
Let's go a little bit deeper and talk about ads and AMC. I see a lot of brands, a lot of agencies make mistakes with ads. I'm sure you see that too now at Xnerda. Talk about or share, like, what do you think are some of the things that people are missing that if they can make just a couple of like practical changes, it might actually improve their performance and they could get better at what they're doing?
Yeah, I think even to like take a step back. So I saw sponsored ads and how quickly it was adopted from somebody saying, "What is sponsored ads?" to testing it and basically being like, "Okay, like we need to scale this out." I would say AMC is maybe the closest thing from a trajectory standpoint of 9 months ago, people were asking us, okay, what is AMC? 6 months ago, people were like, how do we adopt AMC? And now the conversations are, we have AMC in our media plan. It's a requirement. What are the advanced ways? What are the best practices and the use cases that we should be thinking about? And I think that trajectory is just going to obviously continue to explode because with AMC, and for those that don't know what AMC is, which I'm assuming now a large majority of folks do, it basically is like an anonymized database of all of your customer impressions on Amazon. And this is literally the data that folks, when I used to work at Amazon, this is the data that people were asking us for that me and somebody that worked at Amazon couldn't share, but now is just generally available to the public.
It's
And
kind of
so when
crazy
I
to think
first,
about.
it's insane. Like when I first saw it, I was like, wait, is this actually what they're launching? Because I just thought back to my time, I was like, we would never launch this or we would never give this to folks. And now it's like, it's generally available as long as you know how to pull the data.
Hmm.
So I think that's where now you have an understanding of how powerful AMC is. One of the key things and the things that I think hold people back from AMC is number one, they have to know how to write SQL. They have to be fairly technical, right? If they want to pull from the native console, and Amazon's getting better at this, where they have no code, templated structures where you don't necessarily need to know how to write structure to maybe do SQL to really kind of do the base level of AMC. And I think like the base level of AMC is like there are custom audiences that you can build on AMC that if you're running a DSP campaign, you should probably have, or you're leaving money on the table, like an add to cart but have never purchased,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that should be a standard audience for the majority of your DSP campaigns. I think where we're starting to see people leverage AMC in a really creative way is they have a structure in place where they have effectively a query library and they're able to build out a query library of all of the best use cases and use cases that are actually not just analyzing the data but driving performance. They build that query library, they have it structured in a way where it's scalable and it's automated. And that's where I think a lot of folks were like, a great use case is I just talked to a brand that was using AMC, and they were pulling basically associations for their gateway ASINs. So they could see if
Mm.
somebody buys one of their specific ASINs or goes to a detail page, what other ASINs do they buy together, or what other ASINs do they typically buy afterwards in a separate order. And then now with the launch of bid boosting, they were able to create a custom audience that targeted those specific ASINs for those gateway ASINs, and then they targeted the other specific ASINs that people bought together.
Yeah.
And so they're effectively retargeting these ASINs based upon what people bought together and what people bought one after the other. And it's been really successful for them. And now they have those custom audiences, they have those reports.
They can run them anytime they want.
Exactly. On a weekly, monthly basis, they analyze that, they see all of that data, and then they're creating these custom audiences to build on top of their sponsored ads campaigns. And they're seeing incremental, not just like standard performance, they're seeing incremental gains. So that's where I'm starting to see a lot of folks that are looking at AMC in a creative way, in a different way, and they're starting to see a lot of success from it.
That's what I like to call cross aisle shopping. So someone buys, apples, and they also buy milk, in a regular grocery store. Now you're like at the milk, you're like, hey, check out these new apples. It's an opportunity to, and maybe they might have purchased already, but not necessarily. But if you know that there's a greater affinity there, why not try and capture more of those people? Whatever the commonality is, go after and find that and take advantage of that. And I think that's a huge benefit to just be able to create a custom audience like that and then regenerate it and continue to use it. And one of the things that I was asking, like, what do you think are the problems that people have? The number one problem that I see people have, well, one, I think it's higher level, is how do you look at advertising? Which sounds like a really generic, maybe even it sounds like a dumb question. But like, what is advertising? And people look at it from an ad type standpoint. Well, I'm going to use some auto targeting. I'm going to use some manual targeting, and then I'm going to create a sponsored brand. I would liken that to me asking you, what are you going to eat for dinner? And you're like, well, I'm going to eat some liquids, probably some solids. It's like, okay, that doesn't really tells me like function, form, but it doesn't tell me what's actually in there. It doesn't tell me anything qualitative. When I think about advertising, I think about targeting. Who am I, or what am I targeting? What are the terms that people are searching that are super relevant, super high intent, that I want to rank organically on? Because at the end of the day, advertising should always be about driving organic visibility. Now, not every single ad type is going to do that. Running some contextual sponsored display campaigns, you're going to show up on a product detail page. Maybe it could, it's going to drive additional sales. Someone clicked in on a term and then went to your product. There's likelihood that you could rank higher organically for that. But like, you need to be building your search equity, and half the page, if you just look at sponsored products, half the page is sponsored products on search results. So you miss an opportunity to drive that search equity. But I think so looking at advertising and saying, what am I targeting? What are the competitors I want to go after? How am I then targeting those competitors? What level of discovery spend am I doing? So like, we break down this 6 or 7 strategies, like buckets of things that everything can pretty much go into. Then you determine what ad types do I want to use to get there. And I just see so much over reliance on sponsored products. It's a great product, but it's not the only one out there.
I think that's spot on. And I think going back to your question around how are people using AMC in the best way, like that's one of the biggest insights that you can pull out from with AMC around sponsored products. Is like, hey, with all, like right now with Amazon, it's like a last touch attribution world, right?
Yep.
And sponsored products typically gets all of the attribution if they click on it last and they're buying the product. So inherently, folks are just like, okay, great, like sponsored products is crushing it.
Yeah.
We need to invest way more dollars into sponsored products and DSP. What AMC has now opened up is that like full funnel conversion path. You're actually able to see that, okay, actually this DSP campaign that we're doing is driving a lot of that traffic, is driving a lot of those brand searches, is driving a lot of that new to brand growth, because you're now looking at that full path to purchase versus just saying sponsored products gets all the attribution. And so that's where I think you start to open up that structure and start to leverage AMC to understand how is DSP, how is sponsored display, how are sponsored brand campaigns, how are those all impacting that overall purchase journey. And then you can actually see, like with AMC, you could literally see, if I were to take out this DSP campaign, what would that do to conversion rates? And you can actually drastically see, if we were to remove this DSP campaign, it actually drops that conversion rate by 4x, right? That's why we need DSP. That's why we need this upper funnel. So that's where I think AMC has opened up a lot of those insights that previously just weren't available before. Where now it's just not like an over reliance on sponsored products. I think people are now finding out that, hey, this is how we actually look at this. And I think full funnel was a buzzword for these last couple of years. And now you can actually get a much better look into the full funnel strategy because of AMC.
What is your linear ROAS versus your last touch versus your first touch? And that I think is huge. I have never seen it. I haven't looked at, hundreds of AMC accounts, but I've never seen it be the case where when someone sees more ad types, conversion drops.
Yeah.
It's always the opposite. I have a great use case for a brand we worked with. I think it was over the course of a month. But we looked at a view attribution basis. So what did people view and then what was the conversion? We were able to reach 1.5 million people with sponsored products alone, but the conversion rate was like 0.01. So it was like, I don't know, I want to say 91 conversions. You add sponsored brands and sponsored display into that, the pool jumped down significantly more, like 500 people. No, it wasn't 500. It was like maybe 700. But the conversion rate jumped to 26%. That's crazy. Why would you not want to leverage that? But people see, I've heard fake gurus. I don't know. I just kind of feel like the term guru is fake. So it's like saying fake. But gurus say you can waste a lot of money on sponsored brands and sponsored display if you don't know what you're doing. Well, yeah, if you don't know what you're doing. If you just think it's going to have the same attribution as sponsored products and you're not looking at it in a funneled approach or understanding what your path to conversion looks like, yeah, of course you could potentially waste money. Also, we added in DSP on top of sponsored products, sponsored brand, sponsored display. Conversion rate increased even more. And total conversions actually increased more too. Apparently my iOS likes that too. I should turn that off.
I think your iOS likes that point that you just made.
But that's that's so crucial. And people should be looking at, if anything, AMC tells you, and of course it's always going to say spend more money. Amazon wants you to spend more money. I'm not going to, sit here and say it's not what it wants you to do, but spend it intelligently. You talked about like you're leaving money on the table if you're not going after people that added to cart, but didn't purchase, or creating odds of like people in this same path to conversion were likely to convert. So now we can bid boost. Like I love bid boost, especially in a rank campaign, because I can get super isolated on the term I want to win on, start getting impressions and clicks, and I can really drive down my bid and use a top of search bid modifier to really get placement there. And that can crush. And then you've got more control over what you want. Like that's why segmentation in a campaign, I don't care about this at all. That's why segmentation in a campaign is so crucial. You need to have isolation so that you can drive the results that you want. Otherwise, you're like trying to drive multiple steering wheels at the same time. It's just super hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where I just think that right now with AMC, it's literally, I talk about this where it's a blank canvas. Like the people that are going to win, and we talked about people that know what they're doing and they're doing it well. The people that are the most creative, the people that test and learn, the people that look at things in a different way versus like, this is what we've done before. Because now AMC, you can pull, extract, learn whatever data that you want, right? And so now it becomes a sense of like those people, and a lot of those times it's not those major brands, enterprise brands that are driving the innovation or those creative use cases.
Nope.
It's the even like the mid-market brands that move really fast, or even like the people that are, it's their livelihood to be on Amazon. Those are the folks that we're actually seeing innovate with AMC in a much faster, much quicker way, that are figuring out ways to get a step ahead, right? And I think AMC is that route where you can clearly get a step ahead versus 99% of folks if you are open to test and learn, if you are creative, and if you know how to do things the right way. Like I talk about this where there was a use case that is now, I think, fairly popular, or maybe not super popular, but it's one of the best use cases that I've heard with AMC targeting, where you can now effectively geo-target for sponsored ads. And I learned this where we hosted an AMC masterclass, and somebody from a brand that wasn't a PNG, all right, that wasn't one of these major enterprise brands. It was someone that was in the weeds, that was testing, learning, thinking about AMC every single day. That was just like, well, actually now, like now that we're going through these exercises, I just thought of something. Like you can potentially geo target on sponsored ads now with these AMC custom audiences and bid boosting. And we're like, we sit there and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, you can. Because now you can obviously leverage the DSP line items and the targeting there and then layer that onto your sponsored ads campaign. And so you can geo target. And I've heard people have a ton of success uh, with geo targeting with sponsored ads. And those are the things that I get really excited about,
Yeah.
where I don't ever call myself the smartest person in the room. Like just sitting there talking with e-commerce leaders, talking with these folks that are literally testing, learning, trying, coming up with creative ideas, and then seeing that actually drive results. Like not just creative ideas, but creative ideas that drive results. That's where I get really excited, and that's where I think AMC is trending, and that's where I think we've literally scratched the surface. We haven't even come close to all of the things that AMC can and will do.
Man, there's so much meat on that bone. I've got like 5 things I want to say, but I love the test and learn. There seems to be I've actually said today, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the room. I don't think I just have some amazing my iOS agrees again. I don't think I am just the most amazing person. I mean, honestly, 100%. Like, if I was relying totally on my own ability, I would fail every time. I truly believe that I rely upon the opportunities that God gives me. I step into those opportunities. He provides. I'm going to do the work. But I don't think it's that. I just think it's one like a curiosity, asking questions. How does this happen? Why does this work this way? And it was probably super annoying to people when I was younger, but like that's how I get stuff done. All right. Hey, June, I have a question. Do you know anything about this? Okay, cool. Do you know anyone who does? Great. Can you connect me with that person? I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions. I go out and pay people and ask them questions to help me get better in the sales process, get better with marketing, all that stuff. But I'm asking questions and curious, and then I'm willing to go test and experiment. And maybe that's just the entrepreneur in me, but advertising is kind of one big experiment. I don't know if anybody wants to admit that because there's a hubris of like, I'm the smartest, I'm the best at ads. Yes, I know the structures that work. Yes, I know some of the things that are going to make the most sense, but I'm willing to create this custom audience and test it. I'm willing to test bid boosting. I'm willing to make tweaks and adjustments to see how it works. That could then create a whole new strategy or approach that would be successful. And so that's what advertising is to me. I mean, it's controlled experiments. We do like a week or 2 of research when we bring on a new brand, both an account manager and an advertiser. We've got a process that we run. We do research, we compare, create the strategy. Then we go out and we get very specific in targeting and we run water through the pipes. And then we see, does it work or not? And there's sometimes it's like, hey, let's turn off this campaign. It's just not working like we want. We're seeing better results over here. But like, that's what it is. It's like controlled experimentation. I don't think you need to be the smartest person in the room. You might be selling yourself short, but I don't think you need to be the smartest person in the room. I think you, like you said, you just have to have a willingness to experiment, but then experimenting without learning is not going to help you at all either. So you got to be able to take something away from that.
Exactly. And that's where I said, like, you have to test and learn, but you also obviously test and learn and definitely optimize. Like, learning is one thing, but then, like, putting that into practice. And I actually think that's where AMC is still a gray area for folks because they don't necessarily fully know or have fully learned how to leverage the data. Like, they're like, oh my gosh, I get so excited about the data, but then just like, okay, what do I do with the data? And so that's where I think this whole fundamental idea of AMC, the data, it becomes all connected once you actually learn what to do with the data. And again, to your point, that comes back with testing and learning firsthand, and then actually applying that and not being afraid to honestly make mistakes, right? Because I think that's one of the things where, especially some of these, I would say, again, the larger brands where at times they're like, we know what works and we know XYZ, and this is what we're going to do. Maybe we'll dip our toe in, but at the very least, like, we know if we continue to do this, we'll get X. Well, what if you could do all of these other facets of AMC's AI, all of the different campaign optimizations that you could do and see not just what you guys are doing today, but a 20 to 25% increase in the baseline. So I think that's where those conversations, like obviously the devil is in the details, right? Like you have to get to the details, you have to get to the nuances for it to actually drive performance and for actually mean something. But I think to your point, the people that ask those questions, the people that are curious, those are the folks right now that we're seeing have a lot of success.
I can say from personal experience, and it sounds like you have it as well, but that big brands, one, just fundamentally don't understand the marketplace of Amazon. I mean, there's a lot that we don't fully understand, but there is a misunderstanding of how it works. There is a passing off of, well, it's just this, it's just digital. And to be honest, under 20% of sales happen online. So retail is still huge. National media can drive great results. But I see Amazon as an acquisition channel, a customer acquisition channel. How do you get in front of people that are already willing to buy, like you said, really high intent? And then how do you bring them into the fold? Then what you do beyond there, that determines how successful you are at introducing them to your brand. Do you have exclusives on your direct-to-consumer? Do you have a retail presence? Are people seeing your product in store? Maybe they bought on Amazon because they're buying regular things. Maybe you are, someone who buys paper towels. They also want to buy a sandwich bag, and you sell the best eco-friendly sandwich bags ever. Well, if someone's now bought your product because you targeted them paper towels, well, they might probably go to the store to buy that as well. Then they see your product on the shelf. Oh, I already know this brand. I bought it. Oh, okay, and they're running some kind of deal or some kind of promotion. Cool, I'm going to pick up that product. Like what you do with it afterwards is up to you, but it's a huge opportunity that's missed, and they just don't understand the role that it plays. And so you're right. They're like, well, we know this works, so we're going to do a bunch of brand awareness stuff. And I actually think that's where some of the smaller brands miss out. They're so attribution and ROAS or ACoS focused. They advertise and manage to that target instead of trying to grow and increase. And so I think both ends of the spectrum could learn. They need to the big brands need to be focusing on what digital can do, but the small brands also need to be thinking about like, how do I increase overall awareness?
Yeah, and I think, and don't get me wrong, like there are heads of e-commerce that I've spoken with at very large brands that are thinking about it in the right way. And I think a part of it is also like those folks that are doing it really well. It's funny, like I've seen a trend. It's been a very interesting trend where heads of e-commerce or e-commerce leaders are starting to build out like their own like little innovation or analytics department within their teams that are focused on data versus like a lot of the other like standard structures of CPG companies or what have you, where we're starting to see a lot more trends around more of an analytics focused role, somebody that digs really deep into the data where they're just like, yeah, we need to hire this role. Do you have anybody in mind, et cetera, et cetera. So I've gotten that in a lot of these conversations. And I think fundamentally, if they structure their teams and they have the right systems in place, they could see so many more advantages than maybe what they're doing today. And I think that's like the baseline where I try to have these conversations, and that's where we're not trying to necessarily sell them anything. We're trying to get them to a point where they understand like what potential opportunities are now available to them that without AMC or without a lot of these structures, it just wasn't available before. And once I think folks really wrap their heads around this idea that, okay, there is actual performance gains and things that we can do with AMC that we just haven't been able to do before. Like step one, okay, we have that. Now it's like, then they build the right infrastructures and systems in place. And that's where I get like, as much as like, obviously all of these brands that we work with and the things that we've seen, I just think that's where I think like, I continue to get more and more excited about AMC because I see all these things and I see what can happen at scale when you do it in the right way.
Yeah, I love that. I love the ability to innovate. I think that even beyond what we're talking about in search, there's other additional layers like search advertising. There's, how is Amazon changing search? How are we targeting people based on search? If we're talking about high intent, well, people are looking for products and Amazon's now showing them products. If they do utilize Rufus, they're showing them products based on the actual use case of the product. So like, but that all comes back to what does your listing look like? Do you have the right intent? Do you have the right use cases? And then are people leaving you reviews that are actually showcasing that use case? And then are you targeting those people? Like there's a whole evolution that's happening, and I think it'll it's coming fast and furious, but I think adoption might take a little bit of time. But I do think that we're getting better at adoption as time goes on. It's not going to take 20 years for people to adopt something. It might take 5 to 10 to become more fully integrated. But we just got more information. We got more access to people. So, and generative AI, of course, has been very, very exciting for people. And we were talking about this before, like customer adoption, as in the consumer. How much are they going to adopt that versus like a brand utilizing it? A brand probably is going to utilize it and be in play, just like Amazon has all this data and they're finally releasing it, 10 years later, but they've got all this data and they're releasing it. What is the consumer adoption going to look like too? So there's a whole evolution I think that's coming, and that's going to allow you to, as you lean in, instead of being afraid of testing stuff, lean in and get the information, get the data first before anyone else does, determine what works, and then you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I guess, and obviously, I think one of the key things there is like the rise of LLMs and just how much exponentially AI has gotten better in like the last 2 or 3 years. And I think that's where, like, even if we think ahead to like these AI agents, like not even just AI now, but in the future of what's going to be possible. Like, imagine a world where I go back to that geo-targeting example. Imagine a world where an AI agent is running and it recognizes that for some reason there's a storm that's happening and a bunch of rain is going to fall on Seattle in the next 2 hours. It recognizes
odds are pretty high of that happening.
Odds are very high, as you can see with the gray skies behind me. But with that happening and the AI agent automatically recognizing it because it's plugged into a weather API, weather.com API, it then adjusts all of your keywords campaigns for rain boots and increases them. Like I think that's where you start to think about how cool AI and how many different use cases are going to be possible from those kinds of examples, where I don't think that's actually like in the future, 10 years later. I think that basically how fast and how rapid AI is evolving right now, that's going to be happening sooner than actually people think.
All right. If people want to know more about what you're doing, I think we could probably go on forever. But if people want to know more about what you're doing at Xnerda, just what you're doing in general, where should they go to look? Should they look maybe under a rain cloud? Is that where you're going to be? Or is there somewhere else that might be more applicable?
Well, you could probably find us underneath a rain cloud because we're here in Seattle, Bellevue to be exact. But obviously, you can go to our website, xnerda.com, or you can find us on LinkedIn. We're both pretty active there.
It's been so great, man, to have a conversation. And you're also one of the people that I've had on my podcast that I've actually met in person, too, which is cool. So yeah. I'm sure I will see you again soon. But that's it, people. We don't have anything else. I mean, we have more, but we're just not going to share it with you. You don't got to go home, but you got to get out of here. Peace. All right, that was the show. What did you think? That was the longer game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, you can go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you are active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, and you're in the retail industry, then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given up your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.